Okay, thank you everybody for joining us for Career Conversations for February 2023. This evening, we have Zelda Gebhardt with us. My name is Lori Scharf, and I am a content um, contractor for Career Connect at APH. I want to thank everybody for attending. I have some questions here to discuss with Zelda, and then we will be opening the questions up to my colleagues who are with us tonight, Katie Frederick and Lee Huffman. I'm sorry, my computer is distracting me in my ear for no apparent reason. So we're going to be interviewing Zelda about her career throughout her lifespan and discussing the fact that she is somebody with low vision and how she personally has made some changes in her work over time to adjust to her needs visually. So, Zelda, why don't you begin telling us a little tiny bit in a few minutes about and that way we can have a discussion about a little bit about what you started out doing and what you transitioned to. So why don't you describe that for the next 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay. Well, good evening. I'm happy to be here. Careers are are fun, and learning is something that I've always tried to do, and I'm continuing to do. Um, I always knew I wanted to do something in medicine, but I didn't know what, and I knew didn't want to spend a lot of time getting to my end result. So what I opted to do was go to a four-year college, and I went into what they called at the time um, medical secretary. And I thought, well, I can always transfer those credits if I decide that's not what I want to do. And I took that, and I was in a hurry to get on with life. And I took like 18 and 21 credits in a semester, went to summer school, and I got my associate's degree in like a year and a half. And then I got married and started working immediately in a hospital setting, in the medical records department. I was doing transcription, and at that time, I didn't know I had anything wrong with my eyes whatsoever. I, after that, found out that I have Stargardt's, which is a deterioration of the retina. And it was just causing my eyes to get very fatigued. So I wasn't using any kind of devices. I didn't even wear glasses. In fact, glasses don't do anything for me. So I've never worn glasses. But that's kind of how I got started, Lori.
Okay. And while you were doing medical transcription or secretary work, as they referred to it,
Yeah, back then.
what what, if anything, did you do specifically to help you familiarize yourself with with medical terminology and things like that?
Well, the college I went to kind of, you know, they they made it look like they were going to give us more medical terminology than we actually got. I did an
Mm,
awful lot of on the job training, which
yeah.
there's a lot of careers that end up that way. You learn what you need to learn in school in your training, and then you you learn a lot on the job. But we did get a good background in business correspondence and accounting and business law, and that type of stuff. Of course, word processing at the time. And so that was all very helpful, but the true medical terminology, that's a growing field. New medications, new practices, new procedures, new everything all the time. So I really found that rather interesting in the 19 years that I worked both in the hospital situation and in a clinic situation, and then later on as a contractor. I contracted with a company who provided transcription for different medical institutions. And so they paid me and they got paid by the institutions I didn't work directly with. And that was something I could do out of my home. And I know they still do that today, but I'm not doing that.
Mhm. Okay. So you mentioned that you started out in a hospital and then you transitioned to doing work out of your home. And what were some considerations that you took into consideration to make that decision to work out of your home?
Okay. Well, in between times, I did work in a clinic also. But when I got to the point where I couldn't drive to work, um, I I had to do something different, and so that's the reason I started working out of my home, doing the same things, with different equipment, but just doing it from my home instead of in house, so to speak.
And
And I had progressed to the point where I was using magnification on my screen and a CCTV or a video magnifier. um, Along the way, I've had to adjust to my vision loss in that manner.
and can you talk a little about the adjustment process for you throughout the time? Like, were you able to figure things out on your own? Did you reach out to service providers? Um,
It's really interesting, Laura, because it was because I was working for a doctor, and one of our patients um, was diabetic and was getting receiving services we lived in South Dakota at the time, and was receiving services from their vision service office, that I even found out there was anything out there. And so I kind of tucked,
wow.
yeah, I tucked that away, because that isn't widely known in most clinic situations. Most doctors don't even know. So it's not a secret, but it isn't widely known. And so I just found out what I needed to know. And then when I got to the point that I needed some of those things, I did ask for services.
And do you find yourself both in your work setting when you were working and now in your daily life using both high tech and low tech devices?
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
I use everything and anything that I can do to get the job done. And it's a combination of handheld magnifiers. I I have a small video magnifier and a large desktop one. I've got a portable one that I can stick in my purse. I just have all kinds of gadgets that help me, because in certain situations one works better than another.
Yeah, that's true. More tools in your toolbox, the
That's
easier
right.
things are to get done.
Absolutely.
Some essential skills that you think are important to be doing office management work like you did with the insurance agent or even the clinic management skills that you did.
Hmm.
What are some essential skills, either whether you're blind or low vision or somebody in general, that you would think are beneficial, that would help you do your job?
Well, it always helps to be as organized as possible. And so that's, I think, number one key. Number two, I've used a lot of colors, different colored file folders for different things, that type of thing, to help so that I could at a glance, because I do see colors and I realize that some people don't. But with my low vision, then too, I use a much larger font. When I was making labels um, for the file folders that everyone used in the office, I would still make them as large as I could, and that way it helped me to find them more at a glance, so I didn't have to study them, so to speak. So those are a couple of things, and I I have encountered throughout both. You mentioned my work as an office administrator in um, the insurance agency that I worked at, and I found that people in general, bosses in particular, usually don't understand what all we're capable of. And I had to continually kind of push out of my box, so to speak, to let them know, hey, I could do that, or I'll try that, and because it's like, well, I didn't want to overwhelm you with that, and it's like, no, let me try, let me do it. I can do that. So I have to continue to do that, to make sure that they know that I don't have to just do the humdrum stuff, but yeah, I'm willing to learn a new program, a new um, whatever it is, and sometimes just out of courtesy, they don't want to overwhelm or stress us, but we have to keep keep knocking at that door and exploring new things.
So were those situations where you really had to advocate to basically get them to give you work to do, or?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Like in the office of the where the insurance agency, um, I said I can manage the database. I do access for the database for our membership for our state affiliate because at the time I was membership chair, for that, and so I was familiar. So there's been a crossover, things that I've learned on the job that I could use in my volunteer life, and vice versa too. Things that I've done volunteering that have enabled me to learn new skills that were helpful in my job.
When it comes to personal advocacy, what do you think is important for people to remember when advocating?
I think we have to do it with kindness. We want them to treat us with kindness and respect, and we should do the same in the other way. I think gentler approach is the way to start. At least you can get more insistent if you need to, but that's where I go with advocacy.
Mhm.
Advocacy is just letting them know what your needs are, and if you can do that in a kind way, that's usually better received.
Yeah, and that's a skill that you can start at any age. Okay.
Absolutely. And it
Okay.
lasts for a lifetime.
Oh, it certainly does. It certainly does. And my last question is, do you have any words of wisdom for anybody that you would that's listening here to us at Career Conversations this evening that you would like to offer up?
Well, I would say never quit trying. See things that are possible and dream big, and then figure out the small steps you need to get to them. Um, that's something that those itty bitty little things you do on a daily basis add up to bigger things, and so tackle those small goals first, and it will lead to the bigger things that you want to accomplish. Always have those bigger things in mind, but the only way you can get there is by taking that first step, and that's what I would say is important to do, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing, is to just start out and know where you're headed. Know that it might be a zigzagged path, but it. Mine certainly has been. I'm a wife and a mother. We have 4 grown sons and we have 11 grandchildren, and family has been important to me. So I've been able to blend career and family and volunteer work. And now, I'm not employed anymore. I'm fully retired, but I'm busier than ever. I I stay busier than I'd like to on most days, but that makes my life full and full of purpose.
And it's what keeps people going and moving and learning, all important things.
Right.
So we're going to turn it over. Lee, do you have any questions? And then please, if you have questions in the audience, you can definitely start typing them into the chat, and Katie will collect those questions once we hear from Lee, and we'll move on to the questions in the chat box.
Hi, Lori. Thanks. It's interesting to meet because I have Starsguard as well. So it's
Oh, you
always
do?
nice. Yes, it's always
Yeah.
nice to meet somebody else that has the same eye condition that I do, because it is fairly rare as far
It
as eye
is.
conditions go. And so it's always nice to meet somebody that kind of understands. We kind of see things the same way, so to speak.
Mhm.
I probably have two questions for you. My first question is, when you started realizing that you were having vision issues, did you ever seek out rehabilitation services from your state? For example, like the Department of Rehabilitation Service, did you actively seek them out?
I did. I did. And first, like I said, when I first got the diagnosis, I was a resident of South Dakota, and they have a separate agency. Theirs isn't all rolled in together with VR. They have a vision agency also. Yeah, and at that time, I really my cuties weren't at the point where I really needed that much. But it was the start of the journey. It was the start of the acceptance of the diagnosis, because that's kind of a bitter pill to swallow. Because in the beginning, you think, oh my, this is really going to change my life, and it has changed my life, but it hasn't always been for the worse. So there's that, and then when I really did, about the point where I had to change jobs because I was no longer able to drive to work, we actually moved to North Dakota, and that, about that time is I had been using a video magnifier at that point, but I really wasn't using my computer in any other fashion. um, and I applied for services, and I did receive. I've done Magic, I've done Zoom Text. I tried Zoom Text Fusion. Right now, I'm just using the magnification that comes with Microsoft. And granted, I use it about 600 to 700% magnification. So I'm to the point where I think I'd be more efficient if I would start using a screen reader. But that's my next step. But I'm up for the challenge, and I'll get there.
I just want to kind of say that, first of all, you say that you're completely retired now, but it's obviously you're keeping up with technology because you're using Zoom, you're using it, proficiently. And I think it's very important that even as we, move to the point where we're no longer in the competitive workforce, that we do stay up with technology. And Zoom's pretty new. Actually, coming out of the pandemic, we began using it much, much more. And I remember the first time that I used a Zoom feature, I was just very nervous that I wouldn't be able to use it with technology with Zoom Text. So
Yeah,
congratulations for staying with that. And my second question for you really is, you said that you have to sometimes keep knocking at the door of supervisors or things like that to make sure that they know what your capabilities are. Can you speak to any type of work-related coworker experiences where if they possibly you had to prove to them that you could be a team player, work that you had done before?
I really didn't have a problem with coworkers. In fact, after a while, it's like, "Why, I forget you can't see that." I mean, they just acknowledge that they just assume that have my full vision, and I take that as a compliment, because if I am doing what I need to do and they're not having to cover for me and do my work, I feel like that's a success for me, and it's a
Sure.
good working relationship for everyone. And back to the question you asked, or the statement you made about learning new technologies, I am just into using MailChimp, which is somewhat similar to Constant Contact. It's a
It's
emailing.
complicated.
platform. Yeah.
It's
And
complicated.
it is. But we're doing that. Our state affiliates in the middle of a Giving Hearts Day campaign, and we have our donor list, and we're sending out emails and such along with that, because I couldn't get the pictures to do what I wanted them to do on that. I'm learning Canva, so we're learning
Oh,
two new things.
That's
wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
Mm. Then she can
So
teach the rest of us how to do it.
well, I haven't got it mastered yet, Katie, but I'm
Nobody
working
does.
at it. Yeah, I'm working at it. It's a process, and there's a lot of similarities, you know. So
There's also a lot of accessibility challenges, but thanks to some
yes,
work that some of those are improving. But
I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, those were my questions. Thank you for being here with us today, and I'll open it up to the other questions from our attendees. Thank you for being here
Okay.
with us and setting a great
Well,
example.
and thank you for sharing your eye condition with me, because it always makes us kind of like, oh yeah, another one of us.
all right, are you ready for some questions from the chat?
Absolutely.
All right. So we have a question here about how you handled how did you access paperwork and billing at your for your medical records job? Um, so
Right.
some people think
And
that could be a problem, and can you just
I've
talk a little bit about that?
Right. Well, at the time, now you've got to understand that that was like 25 years ago. Um, we were just starting to use the computer in the office for medical records, and um, at that time, I was getting by with just the video magnifier. Using that in a handheld if I was, retrieving files from the file cabinet or whatever. So if I was to do that today, it would be more of a challenge, but I fully believe that though our vision loss changes the way we do things, we it doesn't really change what we can do. We just have to get really resourceful and figure out a way to do it. And um, I know some of my friends who have less vision than I do would have some answers for you on that, but I'm kind of speaking from the low vision point of view today, so I don't know that I really truly answered that.
Well, kind of a
it-
follow-up question on that.
Mhm.
Did you talked about you were just kind of computers were um, kind of a new thing at the time. Did you use a Windows computer, or what kind of a computer did you?
Oh my, I go back to when I was in college, we actually had the mainframe computers with the key punch and all of
Yes.
that. I'm really dating myself there, but that was in the late 70s, and then of course when we started using computers at work, we used DAWs, we used um, and then then it became much easier. What we have right now is very adaptable to what we need it to do. And like I said, I currently am not using any additional software. I'm using what came with my computer in the box, and that with Office 365, the the magnification that comes with that Microsoft offers us. So
and do
um,
you use a large monitor?
I do. I have a large
Okay.
monitor.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that I do. And in some situations, like in some office situations, I think you'd want to use two monitors so that you could split the screen and have it even bigger. Because that's my biggest problem, is that I see just such a very small portion of the screen at a time, that if a pop-up comes up or something or other, then it's hard to locate it. So I'll have to decrease the magnification so I can find the pop-up so I can get rid of it,
Hmm.
you know. But yeah, there's ways to get around that. And, you know, it does. What bothered me the most was, that maybe I wasn't as fast as I was when I had, full acuities. But I think I probably was able to compensate and do other things. Um, with the understanding, you know, it was more understanding, obviously, of our patients and later on our clients, because of the needs that they had, and I could kind of foresee. And one real advantage is that when I was answering the phone, um, I couldn't see the little screen that said who the call was coming from, but I have a keen sense of hearing and I could recognize voices, which totally amazed a lot of people. So that's something that I developed that, you know, I maybe wouldn't have honed in on that if I would have been able to do it otherwise.
And kind of along the technology front, have you, I know you use the magnification, but have you ever
Mhm.
used a screen reader?
Yes, well, you know, I said I had tried Fusion, the fusion of Zoom Text and JAWS. I thought that sounded like the perfect thing because, you know, if I'm going to learn something, I want it to be able to last throughout whatever vision acuities I have. And so I purchased it, but I purchased it right away, and that was a mistake. I'm sure they have improved the product a lot since when I tried it, but though we had the RAM and the whatever you need to have, we the computer I was running was supposed to be able to run it, had the specifications for it. Um, it would freeze it up and it would slow it down, and it was so frustrating. And I shared a computer with another fellow, and when he came upon it, and you know, it was just a nightmare. um, so I think that has changed, and that would be an excellent tool. My thought process of getting it would be that I could learn the keystrokes, um, you know, while I was still had some vision and could see, and get into it gradually, and then go totally with the JAWS after that. But I still have those keystrokes to learn. I learned a few of them, but
And
not
and
many.
that is a huge learning process,
Mhm.
especially when you're
Yes.
going from being able to use a mouse and look at a pointer and things like that. You know, it's a big adjustment, and you know, it's interesting because it's a very different way, but also you're not taking your hands off the keyboard as much and things
Mhm.
like that, and you are able to really focus on the screen.
Mhm.
And they've made some very good changes to Zoom Text and Fusion, and
Mhm.
they play much nicer than they did previously.
I'm so
Um,
glad to hear that. Yeah.
and I'm not a user, but I use JAWS, but I
Mhm.
have been in and done some trainings with people who use Fusion.
Mhm.
So it really is, I have to say, a fantastic option for people that may be at an in-between point where they're struggling to try to figure out how to cope with changing vision and meeting their needs.
For instance, today I was looking at a 9-page document, and my eyes just said, "Oh, I don't want to read that." And it would have been so much easier had I been using something like Fusion,
Mhm.
and I could have just had it read to me. But shorter things, I still, you know, have enough vision to read them, and my eyes don't resist that. So.
Yeah. And another option would have been to use narrator.
Well, yes, but yeah, I actually did Google that, and yeah, another day I'll figure that one out.
Yes, that one
But
can be challenging at
but
times
but Laura, you
sometimes.
caught me. That was something I did think about. I thought, oh
Now,
yeah, now's
Or
the
you
time to
can,
use my narrator.
right? Or your iPad can, you can have it speak the screen. So you have some
yeah,
options
Yeah,
that we can help you
yeah.
with.
there
And
definitely are options. It
There
goes back
are,
to that toolbox we spoke
right?
about.
That's right. And
Yes.
I do have an iPad, which I love.
Yeah.
You know, it is really handy. It's portable.
Mhm.
I
Yes.
like that. And, you know, and there are definitely things that I use it for, but I'm really like my PC. You know, that's my go-to. And that's where I spend most of my time and do most of my stuff.
All right. So we have a comment here from a participant that says they think that associate's degrees are often too overlooked. And after this person received
Mhm.
a Bachelor of Science in botany and then started losing their vision, they weren't able to find work, but they did receive an associate's degree and then worked as a medical transcriptionist for many years. So
All
again,
right,
just keeping those
go.
options open, right?
Absolutely. And true. Everybody's looking for that thing to hang on the wall. And it isn't always about that. It's learning the skills
No.
to do what you need to do. And obviously for any degree, even our associate's degree, we took things that we probably weren't going to use later on. Um, I know I definitely did. But the reason I went that route is because I always had in mind that I would go back to school and get more. And I wanted those credits to count because you work hard for them, you pay for them, and you want them, and they're always with you, no matter what. I don't think I've ever done anything unless it was shorthand. I took shorthand, and that was kind of a I don't know what for now. Just
You can
I,
write in code. I mean,
well, it doesn't really serve a purpose, and I do remember some of it, but yeah, most of my handwritten stuff kind of looks like shorthand, but it's undecipherable by any eyes. Yeah.
So we have a question about, when you were working in more of the administrative setting, if you had, if you had to like check people in, for something, did you ever have to look at things like a driver's license or other identification? And how did you accomplish that if that was a duty that you had to perform?
Yes, and actually, as I went from doing medical transcription, both, I at the hospital we decided to have an administrative team, and because we joined the clinic, the hospital, the nursing home, home health, everything under one big umbrella. And so I became what they call the director of outpatient services, which meant that I managed the clinic. So that required me to do some stats for the uh, to present to the rest of the team, that type of thing. And actually that I think what this person's referring to is when somebody would come and maybe you're serving at the receptionist's desk and you need to take
Right.
their cards and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah, well, there's a simple way of dealing with that. You can photocopy them, and there's somebody on your team that can go ahead and get those inputted. At that time, because of that I still had some usable vision. I could do it visually with the help of a magnifier and then a CCTV. um, so yeah, you kind of have to work with the team that you've been blessed with, and everybody has their skills or their talents or their areas that they really enjoy. And you know i'd I've never worked in a situation where I didn't, you just do a lot of adjusting. It's kind of like a choreographed dance. You do this, I do that, and we worked well together, because we all possess different skills and talents.
And what was a magnifier that you used? Did you say that earlier, or what was the
Well,
device that worked for you?
I've got, I hate to admit it, but I've got probably 6 or 7 handheld magnifiers, and
Mhm.
depending on what I'm having to see, will be the strength of the one that I grab. I carry 2 in my purse at all times, one for that
Mm.
itty bitty little print, and one that takes what other people would call large print and makes it so that it's readable for me. Um, and that's kind of how I do that.
Did you ever have any formal training in using the different magnifiers? Because I find that sometimes people are struggling because they don't have the right magnifier for the task, or they're holding the magnifier too close or too far from what they need to be magnified, or not at the right range from their eye, things like that.
I think there's a real learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning, they started me off with a rectangular kind of box type. They're on a little bit of a stand, and that gets you away from what you want to read, the right height. Well, as my eyes got worse, I needed larger magnification. They don't come with one of those, in that type of situation. And it's just out of necessity and out of practice, that you learn where it is in your sweet spot,
Mm-hmm.
where it is that you need to have it. And so, I just think stick with it, try different ones. I did our North Dakota Vision Services School for the Blind is not a residential school, but it has different weeks throughout the year for both um, students, children, and adults. And I have been there on several occasions for an adult week, and visited the technology department where they have various different magnifiers and such. And if you feel like I'm on the cusp of needing something stronger, I'll try those out and see, which brand, which kind, which strength is working best for me currently, because mine's a forever changing thing. I just what I could do last year or last month or yesterday may not be what I can do today. So it's not real fast changing, but it is changing. So I
So
have to
kind of
adapt. Yeah.
right along that line, we have a question here that asks if can you talk a little bit about when you started losing your vision, what was that adjustment, and how was that for you? And it sounds like you might still be you're still adjusting and adapting, right? So
Yeah. Well, not to the, it was shocking. I'll just say that when I got the diagnosis, I had seen a ophthalmologist, and he looked at my retina and he was pretty sure. And just by chance there was a retinologist that came once a month that happened to be there the day that I was there. I guess I'm lucky, I don't know. um, and he confirmed that I had fundus flaviomaculatus, which is just another word for Stargardt's. Stargardt's is easier to say, but and it wasn't something I wanted to hear, because at the time, going blind meant a radical change in my life. I thought it did, um, but then it didn't. I got the diagnosis, and I didn't think I wanted to trust what they had said. Maybe they're wrong. After all, I worked in the medical field. I knew diagnoses are often wrong. And so I got a second diagnosis. I went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and I saw a highly renowned doctor there, Dr. Helmut Buechner, and he confirmed, he agreed with him. And so then I thought, well, maybe I'm going to accept this, but they couldn't tell me how fast it would progress, to what point I might lose my vision. There were a lot of unknowns, and so you don't know really what you're accepting. So I think that kind of slows down the acceptance process a tad. And then I decided, I'm going to just live each day with what vision I have and do what I can, and I think that has served me well. Of course, I had times when I would let it get me down, especially when I wanted to just hop in the car and go and I couldn't drive any longer. Um, but I also have a spouse that wouldn't let me get in my pity pot, and and I sometimes that irritated me a tad because I wanted to say,
Mhm.
"Can I just have my moment?"
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
but he knew that wasn't going to be a good place for me to be. And so he kind of stuck to his guns, and now I'm thankful he did, because I would just be more determined to do what I could for someone else or try and think outside of me. And that has served me well, um, in doing that. So here I am, the lady who doesn't see well, who doesn't drive. I'm like, for years, I was the lady at church that was the head of the quilting group. And it was these older ladies that I I couldn't cut around a block like they do, with the scissors. They mark it with a pencil and cut it with the scissors. I couldn't do that, but I used a rotary cutter, and they used me use
Uh,
my roller and a rotary cutter, and go, "Oh, that's so much faster. That's so much more accurate. Zelda, you can just cut the blocks," So, I mean, I was teaching them something, and then
Sure.
if they were starting to have visual changes, they're going, "Oh, it's not the end of the world. Zelda has vision problems, and look
Mm,
what she can
mhm.
do."
Yeah.
So, I was able to be an encouragement for them too. So, it was good for me, and it was good for them because I had a purpose, and they had somebody to cut their blocks. So,
Can you talk, just, when you say the doctors and things weren't
mhm.
sure, what your vision might look like, or how, when it might change? And is that just they didn't have the medical knowledge at the time, or
No,
is that Stargards in general?
I think it's Stargarts in general, and I'd really like to have a conversation with Lee sometime. So give him my contact
We can
information.
connect. Yes,
We
we
Sounds
can
like
can
a
make that
do
plan.
that.
Sounds
happen.
like a plan.
Okay, okay.
I think you're exactly right. They don't sometimes know.
yeah.
Well, they don't know, and they don't want to say, because if they say, "Oh, you've got 10 years," and then seven's the years you got,
Sure.
Yeah.
they don't want you to limit yourself and be
Mhm.
waiting for that da 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 dum,
Right.
here it is. So I think they're cautious in that because they want you to go home and have a good life.
Mhm.
Um, and they also are very, what I want to say, they're in the job of fixing people.
Yes.
Hmm.
And when
Yes.
you have something that can't be fixed, they almost feel like you're an unsuccess story for them.
Mhm.
And it's not that you as a person are not a success. What it is they
Right.
don't feel successful as a medical professional.
In fixing
And
you. Yeah.
Mhm.
right, and as you alluded to before, it really affects the adjustment process, and it's a big struggle.
Mhm.
I think it makes the struggle harder for some people because they don't, they're not meeting, Lee and Zelda, aren't connecting with somebody like them at a time when it's critical, and they're just connecting with this medical professional that's not giving them answers necessarily.
Mhm.
And, they don't have those success stories to go by.
From time to time, I'll think, well, I should go see an eye doctor because as I age, maybe I've got something else going on that could be fixed, that might help. And I find that every time I do, I'm actually educating them, telling
Yes.
them where they
Mhm.
can send their patients, making sure that they know that there are low vision specialists out there, for somebody who's wanting to get a job or a career, that they send them to VR to get what helps
Mm-hmm.
that they have to offer. For somebody who's just wanting to be, remain independent as long as possible, perhaps our vision services is the place for them.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure, and if they just need some peer support, I let them know about our state affiliate, the North Dakota Association of the Blind, because there's plenty of people, and we learn so much from one another. We don't walk the same walk, but we're on the same path. And
Yeah.
so we learn so much from one another. So I make sure that all they know about all of those things, and that they're telling their, I hope they pass it on um, to their patients. I see them, I have the picture of this one guy that I saw. He was a young optometrist, and he was fastly scribbling all of this down. So I think he had good intentions, and I hope he saw through to that, with that. Yeah.
So I have another question. Did you ever receive a full-fledged low vision evaluation from a
One.
low vision specialist?
Yeah, I went to one guy. He was highly regarded. He lived 120 miles from me, and I went once, and he talked about the panning, things that you kind of naturally do to adapt so that you can see what you can see. But no, I really haven't had exposure to that, and that's pretty silly, that we don't. But there's not a natural progression. I don't think that they pass us around enough, or that's been my experience anyhow. I do know, a friend of mine is from the UK, and they handle vision loss way different there. Once you've got a diagnosis, you get the devices you need, you get them, and you don't wait for them, and they don't, they just don't mess around about it. And here
Right.
it's a process.
Yeah.
It's a
Right.
long drawn out process that you
Yeah.
have to really advocate for.
And that can be a challenge if you're dealing with, as
Right.
I'm sure for you, dealing with accepting and grief
If
and,
Right.
and if you don't know what's out there, you don't know what to advocate for yourself.
exactly.
Exactly.
That's
You said
exactly
it.
Yes.
right.
You said it,
Yes.
Lori. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true.
Mhm.
And that's the reason I think, organizations are very important, because you get together with other people, and talk about things, and that's, quite frankly, that's where I've gotten the most help from.
Yeah. And you're currently the first vice president of Council of Citizens with Low Vision International,
Right.
which puts out a fabulous, is it quarterly, I think?
No, actually 6 times a year
Oh, is it
we do a
6 times?
newsletter. Yeah, we decided
See,
to make it shorter and do it more often, so that it wouldn't be
okay.
ancient history by the time the
I
people
know,
got it.
I know at one point it was quarterly, but it's a great
Yeah,
publication.
yeah.
And when I was studying to do my vision rehab teaching degree, I signed up for it because I wanted to learn about low vision because I'm totally
Mhm.
blind, and it taught
Sure,
me so much.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also am, the the past president of the North Dakota Association of the Blind here in North Dakota. And so I'm in a kind of an advisory role, in that position. I also get to serve with Katie on the board of publication for the American Council of
Yeah.
the Blind. So, we get to do lots of different things with lots of different people. That's
Mhm.
the thing, as you're losing your vision, um, that's assuming that you've had some vision at some point. But as I was losing my vision, my world just shrank. I could no longer drive a car. I, you know, I love to read, pick up a book and read it. I don't read books like that anymore. Um, I it's difficult for me to pick up the paper. Headlines is what I get from that, and I just don't even bother. Even personal correspondence, Christmas card time is a nightmare for me, because I
Mm.
should be enjoying these cards as they come, and yet it's not all that fun.
Mm.
And so as those things kind of shrink and shrink and shrink, if you can do something and be successful at it, learn a new skill or whatever, and open that world back up, or meet new people and find out how they do things and stuff. I just think that's been my answer to keeping fulfilled and having a purpose.
That's great. A couple of questions on the job um, front, or wondering what your thoughts are about where um, a good source for people who are blind or low vision. Do you have any thoughts on where they can look for for jobs are good places for that? And also, what about, training on some of the software? This person mentions things like Photoshop and things like that, but just training and job resources. So
Mhm.
thoughts on those?
I don't think we want to box ourselves into a small area. I think whatever you're interested in, for me, it was medical things and helping people. It might be something entirely different for someone else, but I say go for it. There's probably somewhere in that field where you will be successful. Because I don't think there's a list of approved jobs for low vision or blind people. There used to be kind of more of a stereotype of that type of thing. But I think we add value to to um, any career or any job situation. Um, I guess I think if you're interested, in something, there is a job associated with that particular subject that you can be successful at. But I'm not a career specialist. I just, know from my life experiences, um, what I've seen. And if we were to follow this job is for visually impaired folks kind of thing, then other folks would never get to know what we're capable of. Um, and we need to be out there so that people understand that, number one, this isn't catching. We're not going to give it to you. And it isn't the end. After you can't see that big E, it isn't the end of the world. We still have a life. We still have a full life, and it can be good. Um,
The other thing I would just like to add is, Zelda's talked about going from a career to doing volunteer work. Very often it can happen the other way around, where you
mhm.
start doing volunteer work, and out of that volunteer work, you are learning skills and you're connecting with people that see your value. And as a result of those developing those relationships and things like that, you can sometimes get employment. So,
I know where
um,
that's happened. I know in particular, a fellow, he learned um, to use the computer, and he learned how to manage use an Excel spreadsheet, and to mail merge. And
mhm,
from that, he got a job in his local church to do their mailings, and
mhm,
to do their newsletter and get them in the mail, get the labels done.
yep.
So yeah, it in that's really good advice. If
And
you
in,
can't find a job, you can maybe volunteer and develop some skills that will be job worthy.
yeah. And another thing is, regarding training with software and things like that, sometimes libraries,
Mhm.
have training programs that you can go to. I'm talking about your public library, or sometimes some of the talking book and Braille libraries do remote sessions. The New York Public Library, for example, the Andrew High School Library specifically runs trainings on lots of different things, and anybody across the country can participate in those trainings, and they're done through Zoom.
Right, right. So no transportation necessary.
That's
Right.
right.
Yeah, we like that part. And actually, we
Yes.
had a leg up on the general population with Zoom, because we were already
Mhm.
doing virtual meetings, and we
Hmm.
were in that mindset long before the pandemic hit. And so I was helping. I've always been community minded and belonged to community clubs. And when we didn't feel like it was safe to meet in person, I said, "Well, I got a Zoom account. Let's do that." "Oh, we don't know how." And I go, "I'll teach you." So it
Yeah.
was fun to be on that end.
Mhm. We have a question asking how people can learn more about the Council of Citizens with Low Vision International and get your newsletter. So
All right.
Do you
Well,
mind giving me the website and I'll put that in the chat?
right. It's really easy. It's CC, and that's C as in cat, cclvi.org. So cclvi.org, and we have a really, really accessible website, and we've got all kinds of good stuff in there. So I would
And
welcome you to do that. And if you'd like to contact me, you can email me at cclvimembership@gmail.com.
I was just going to say CCLVI is an international organization, and it is a membership organization, and some states also have affiliates.
We do.
I think,
We do. In
yeah,
Kentucky, in the Delaware Valley, which is mostly Pennsylvania, in New York, and in California. That's what I've been doing all day, is working on membership stuff. I love it because it gives me an opportunity to talk to people everywhere. And we truly are international again, Lori. For a few years, we didn't have anyone outside of the United
Oh,
States. But
wow.
we do have members from, Vermont to Hawaii to, it's just, that's another way my world has opened up. But we got a new member from Canada. So we are
Good, good,
truly
good.
international. We earned our eye back. Yeah, and we welcome people of all visual acuities, whether you're sighted and just interested in supporting people with vision loss, or whether you're totally blind, low vision, no vision, whatever your acuities are, you're welcome at CCLVI.
Or professionals even in the field.
Oh, absolutely. We do have a special category for that too. Yeah, yep. Professionals are absolutely welcome. The more the merrier. The more we can get the word out that you know there is there's a lot of world out there and a lot of things that we can do. Because when people first get that diagnosis, it's it hits you right in the gut, and then you find out you can deal with it, and that's a good thing.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Okay. Any last minute questions? I know we're getting towards the end of our time.
Well,
We
I
are
feel
actually,
like
it's
I've
the
been
top of the
talking
hour.
forever. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm
Well,
gonna pause the recording here and just thank you, Zelda, for coming
thank you for the
tonight.
opportunity. I think education